It's 5:30 p.m. and tonight we're going to be having a presentation from MnDOT regarding the aesthetic portion of the Mankato Avenue project. We'll start off with Brian with City of Winona.
Yeah, as you well know, MnDOT's here to present the aesthetic options for the Mankato Avenue project. I believe they've got 4 options on the table for us to discern which way we want to go with it. So I'm going to turn it over to, I think Chad Hansen's going to be presenting for MnDOT.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Yeah, I'll flip my camera on here a second. So I'm the MnDOT project manager on this Highway 43 project. As you're likely aware, Stantec is our design consultant on the project. I know they've worked with you many times on other projects in your city. So I guess with that, I'll keep it brief here, and I'm just gonna turn it over to Dale Grove. He's gonna run through the majority of the question or the presentation here. I'll be available for questions. I mean, if there's questions throughout, if there's anything that I can answer that Dale doesn't, guess we'll just kind of handle it that way. So with that, Dale, I'll just let you take over.
All right, thanks, Chad. Good evening, everybody. We're happy to be here to talk to you about the 43 project. I'm not alone. Kevin Hoagland from Stantec is here with me, and he's going to be running the slides tonight. So I just wanted to say hello, and then we'll jump right into it. And please feel free to answer questions as we move along. We'd be happy to answer them when they come up rather than wait to the end. So I hope we can have a good dialogue about the possibilities for some real beautification options on 43 through this project corridor. We're here tonight because the 43 project is getting close to done. The 90% plans will be handed in soon, and once you get to 90% plans, you're pretty well set in your design as you move ahead. So with the end coming soon, we've got to now start tying up some of the loose ends and some of the details of what's going to happen during construction. Now, this is a project where MnDOT has committed a percentage of the estimated project cost for aesthetics and amenities. So that means that for this project, MnDOT's going to be contributing about $200,000 toward items that are deemed aesthetic or an amenity. Now, we've worked with the engagement committee. We met with them, and they reviewed and gave their input on some of the aesthetic items. And so given what they had provided us, we took that and did some refinement. So what you're seeing tonight will reflect the opinions and the views of that engagement committee. With something to note, the next engagement committee meeting is scheduled for July 21st. So we will be meeting with them again soon. On MnDOT projects, the basic aesthetics can be covered with MnDOT contribution, but a lot of communities like to have more. They want maybe additional lighting, additional trash cans, bike racks, landscaping, and those items will require city participation in the costs. So as we go through our presentation tonight, you're going to see that there are several things, as Brian alluded to, where we'll be looking for city decisions, and they don't have to be made tonight. But the categories where we're going to need to figure out what is going to be included and what is going to be paid for by whom include just general aesthetics, so trees, plants, things like that. We're going to look at the plans for the roundabouts. So what types of plants will we use? Will we use riprap? Will we use colored concrete? Those types of things. Lighting options, and then it'll include some treatments potentially for the center medians, banner poles, grass, colored concrete, again, a variety of different things. And then finally, at the entrance to Winona on Highway 61, there's a welcome to Winona sign that mirrors the one on the west side of town. That is in MnDOT right away by permit, and just because of the expansion on this project, that sign will need to be moved. So the city will need to make a decision on what to do with that sign. Again, we're going to be looking for some decisions from the city by June 21st. So we're still a few weeks out from that. So that's why we're here tonight to present this information. And we don't need to go into the detail of choosing plant types tonight. We just want to make sure that we're identifying the preferred themes and then answering any questions that you might have. So let's take a look at the first slide that talks about trees. So we've identified a number of trees, and we've made sure that these tree types are options that are hardy, and will do well next to a road. As I noted, these were reviewed by the engagement committee and their preferences were noted. And so we've narrowed it down here. And then finally, to be sure that it was acceptable to everybody, we did talk to Chad and City Parks and the MnDOT forester, and they've approved of these types of trees as well. So we have a variety of trees that we could put in the corridor if that becomes an option. And here are some of those. The next slide, we look at some lights. It's important to note that MnDOT is going to light the corridor. There's no doubt about that. But with the corridor like this, you can see in the bottom left, the type of lights we call Cobra head lights. Those are the types of lights that would be used. So we're looking at putting in LED lights where you get good illumination and they're energy efficient. So that's a plus, we think. And then there's the possibility on the right-hand side, you see that light called Hadco PMA pendant. We're looking at adding some decorative lighting that would be used primarily for illuminating trails and sidewalks to make sure that the pedestrians and bicyclists have lights if they're out and about at night as well. Next slide. Here's a section of the road that we've stripped down to just the road. And if you take a look, you'll recognize on the right-hand side, that's Sarnia, the 43 Sarnia intersection. On the left side is Frontenac. So we wanted to show you basically what the pole spacing would look like. And in there, you can see those Cobra headlights that we talked about that would be lighting up the roadway. And they do have some spill back to the trails and sidewalks. So the trails and sidewalks wouldn't be dark if we just used Cobra heads. But these are 40-foot poles. And throughout the corridor, the current plan is to put in 67 of those roadway lights. 8 of the lights are on city streets, so the city will be required to pay for those as per MnDOT cost participation policy. 20 lights are down at the Highway 6143 roundabout. 2 of them at the Brewski Parks intersection. 11 lights are planned for the Riverbend roundabout. 10 at Frontenac, 10 at Sarnia, and then 14 lights that just fill in the corridor. You can see some of those on this one. Next slide. Here we've taken that slide you just saw with the lighting, and you can still see the Cobra heads there. They're still in the same place. But now we started to drop in trees so you could get a better idea of what the corridor would look like with trees and lights intermixed, making sure that the trees don't block the lights to hurt safety aspects of it. But it's a nice blend of the trees and the lights to make it both a pretty corridor and a safe corridor. Next slide. Here's our lighting option B with pedestrian lighting included. For the pedestrian lighting, we're looking at 15-foot aesthetic trail sidewalk lights like you saw in that earlier slide. And there you can see them. Those are turned away from the roadway to make sure that they provide illumination on the path and on the trail. The plan, as is, calls for 33 of those lights to be included to light the trail and the sidewalk. Again, noting that the roadway lighting lights part of the trail, but it leaves some areas darker. So the 33 lights that we've identified really provide the additional illumination to fill those gaps between the roadway lights. And again, make sure that this is a corridor that's welcoming, safe, and acceptable for pedestrians and bicyclists. Slide 6. You can see this is Boulevard Layout Roadway Lighting Option A. Here again, we're just showing you a basic option. You see the Cobra headlights and grass boulevards. So no special treatments for anything. It's just the simple, basic, straightforward, here's what would be done if there was no additional need or want to beautify things. Slide 7. Again, we've added some trees. So this is the Boulevard Layout Lighting Option A, and trees added so you can get a feel for what things will start to look like. And if we go to the next slide, here's lighting option B. And again, we've added those pedestrian type lights, the decorative lights that would be facing the trail or the sidewalk. So you can see there, this would be sort of the full package for lighting, where we've got street lighting, we've got pedestrian lighting, and we've got trees. So you can start to get a feel for what the corridor would look like as you move through it. Let's go to the next slide. This one's a little complicated, so I'm going to take a little bit of time. This is the same area that we just looked at. For the Sarnia roundabout is on your right. Frontenac is on your left. So you can see those roundabouts under all those blobs. The blobs along the road, they kind of look like bells almost, are where the illumination from the planned lights fall. So here you can see, Kevin, if you want to use your cursor a little bit, where the poles are situated, the light path, the light window, if you will, falls primarily on the road. So you can see that these are those Cobra headlights that were designed to light the road. And you will see that some of it falls behind, so it does kind of illuminate the trails and the sidewalks. But the primary purpose of the lights, and what you can see from this plan, is the illumination hits the roadway to make sure that we've got it lit and as safe as possible. Go to the next slide. Now this is the same slide you just saw, except now we've added the trail lighting. So the blobs again along the road where the illumination from the lights fall. And this slide shows both the 40-foot Cobra head lighting and the trail sidewalk lighting off those 15-foot supplemental lights. Again, we include 33 of these lights throughout the corridor to make sure that the pedestrian bicycle facilities are well lit. And it just provides a much nicer, comprehensive, better feeling corridor for folks who aren't driving through it, but are walking or biking or whatever else, not on the roadway proper. Next slide. We'll jump now, but maybe I'll stop and just say, does anyone have any questions about the lighting things that we've just looked at? I know those last two slides are complicated, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them now.
So Dale, this is Pam speaking. I do have a question on the couple of slides ago. There was a kind of an intersection. No, before that, right? I think there, or the one before. No, one more. I just am curious. Right in the center, that seems like there's 3 lights in the boulevard in the center piece.
Yep.
And then there's a crossing. What is that?
That's just, we'll talk about that a little bit. Good eye, Pam, caught that. We're looking at some possible banner poles in the median, if that would be something that the city is interested. So
Okay.
Those aren't lights, but those are decorative and they could be used for, different events or holidays, but yeah, they're banner poles.
Okay, thank you, Dale.
Certainly.
I have a question. Do I need to have this on? Okay. So this image that you have up right now, I just want to make sure I'm understanding clearly. So the Just Grass and Cobra lights is what the state will be providing, and then anything on top of that we are needing to choose and opt in to purchase that. Is that correct?
Yeah, we'd follow, the state has a cost participation policy in place that talks about who pays for what related to aesthetics. So this is the basic. MnDOT has dedicated some money for aesthetics. So anything that is above the basic wouldn't necessarily be completely the burden of the city. But there are things that the aesthetics go beyond 200,000, the possibilities that we've identified. So that's
Okay.
why we need to figure out how much do you want and what is that cost going to be?
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Sure. All right. We'll keep
This is
going.
Mayor Sherman. I have a quick question. Can you go back a couple slides? It was like option 2 and option 3, I think. Yep. So right there, I see a tree disappear and one of the pendant lights appearing. Is that kind of the trade-off? If we want these pendant lights, we're going to be potentially putting less trees in the boulevard?
Yeah. It's to put in one of those lights and have a tree right next to it. Summertime, you lose your light.
Sure.
So there has to be some sort of swap out if we want to make sure that that light is providing the safety benefits that we'd hope it did us.
Okay. Thanks, Dale.
Mhm. All right. So some plants, we've identified some plants again that are hardy, salt resistant plants. We found, and it's again, MnDOT folks that are involved in this have found that sedum mats work well, and we'll show you an option with that later. But here's some of the options to really provide a splash of color in the roundabouts and something that will be as maintenance free as possible, but still be something that's nice to drive by and look at, rather than just plain grass that's going to turn to weeds and everything else. So here's just sort of a palette of plants that are options for us in those roundabouts. Next slide. Now here, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this slide because this really highlights 3 different options for the roundabouts. On the bottom, the real little one in the middle is the base plan. And you'll see that that simply includes concrete, standard concrete, and turf grass. So your roundabout will be fully functional as a traffic, as a traffic control device and move everyone through, but it'll be very plain to look at. Plain old concrete, plain old grass. If you now move to the roundabout on the left side of the page, that's the mid option. So in the mid option, you see again, there are spots where you have standard concrete. In the middle, you can have a sedum mat or some sorts of perennials or shrubs. In this option, you'll see that there are 4 sort of little slivers of gray blend riprap to provide some color differentiation and give you something different to look at than just the plants. Border plantings are included to again help make it a nicer roundabout to look at. So you've added some things that really give you a little bit more color than just the plain old grassy center of a roundabout. And then on the right-hand side of the page, this is the high-end roundabout as far as aesthetics are included. So it is effectively the mid one, but here you replace standard concrete with some colored accent concrete. So now the pavement is looking a little bit different. The sedum mat again has a variety of plants and colors that you can put in, so you can kind of see how that is varied in this option. Accent plantings are added, so that really again adds more to it. And then the riprap here is replaced with border plantings. So here you get a full roundabout of different plant types and colors that bloom at different times of the year, and it really makes for a pretty roundabout as soon as things start blooming in the spring, throughout the year and throughout the fall. Now, it's important to note that on a project like this, where we have limited amounts of colored concrete, we're seeing that the cost of that will usually be pretty high. So the mid and high concepts can either include the colored concrete on the truck apron, or you can just use standard concrete on the entire truck apron. There are some communities that really like that colored concrete and they want to make sure that it's included. And then there are some communities who say, you know what, gray is good enough. With that splash of color from the plants, we don't need to color the concrete, knowing that over time it'll fade and everything else. So we want to make sure that you understand that whether you go mid or high, if those are your 2 choices, you can use colored concrete in either of them, or you don't have to use colored concrete in either of them. So something to look at as we get down to the costs.
Hey,
Next
Dale,
slide. Yes.
Steve Sarving, can you show pictures of what those different ones look like rather than just the drawings?
We don't have it in this, but we can get you some, that's for sure.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Anything else on the roundabouts? All right. So then Michelle had noticed, no, Pam noticed the banner poles, and here you can see them in that top middle picture. We're starting to look at the medians now and some of the things that can be done. You probably recognize the picture from the top left, that's from Levy Park. And there we're looking at accent bands and different colors of the pavement and everything else. Top right is medium poles or banner poles with some median plantings. Again, top right, there you see some bollards, some limestone bollards. Those are from the Winona area. So those are options here that could be implemented as well. And then different type of rock options if you want to have rocks in the median. Bottom left, you see river rock with some plantings. Bottom middle is the granite riprap that I had mentioned earlier, that gray based riprap. And then finally, in the bottom right, things like cut limestone blocks, along with plantings and some riprap. So there's really a variety of things that can be done to enhance the medians and to make them more attractive than to just leave them plain concrete medians that ultimately weeds start growing up in the cracks, and you see in a lot of towns across the country. So those are just some ideas for the median precedent. Now here we're going to build on things a little bit. We're going to talk about roadway concepts and the boulevard options. On the left-hand side is roadway A. That is simple concrete pavement, concrete medians, and then some grass between the curbs and the sidewalk or the trail. So that is a basic roadway corridor, option A. If you jump over to roadway B option, we had boulevard trees, and we, in this one, put some colored concrete bands in the median. You can see how it really just sort of makes a difference when you see it, not only the trees, but that colored median in the middle, much like, again, was done in Levy Park. So next slide, we'll even go a little further. We go from roadway B to roadway C option. And here there's been some granite riprap implemented, some limestone bollards. And again, you can see how that really breaks up the corridor and provides a visually pleasing look. And then finally, the roadway D option, where we have same things as before, the boulevard trees, the colored concrete band, the riprap, limestone bollards, and then some banner poles. Again, those could be used for city events or anything else, but something else to add to the corridor to make it more agreeable to a lot of people and keep it more aesthetically pleasing. Next slide. We've worked hard to make sure that the corridor is going to be not only aesthetically pleasing, but safe for pedestrians and bicyclists and anyone that's trying to use a non-motorized method of transportation. So we wanted to make sure we're providing some things for those folks as well. Based on what we heard from the engagement committee, that bench in the top left was a preferred option. So it's not just your normal plain, what some people might say, ugly park bench. This one's got a little style to it. I really like the way it looks. On the bottom left then too is something that sort of matches the theme of that bench. You can see it's a bike rack. We hope that a lot of bikers do use the corridor. And then bottom or the middle kind of, you see 3 trash receptacles. And we just showed those to show that there's an option for the trash receptacles, whatever you'd like to have. That black one is more of the traditional one that we see around, but the other 2 are just options that might fit very well with the benches and the bike racks. In the top right, there's a wayfinding sign, and we're working to think about ways that we can provide wayfinding for everybody, knowing that there's a lot of things going on in the corridor. It's very nice for people to be able to stop and who aren't familiar with the corridor and say, where am I and what's here? So we're looking at some things like that. The wayfinding can be included. And then finally, again, there's the welcome to Winona sign on the bottom right. And because of its location and because it's on MnDOT right away by permit, that will need to be moved. But that gives you the option to either just move it to a new location, or if you wanted to consider something different for a sign, that would be in play as well. So now we've kind of looked at the plants, the options, and albeit very quickly, but let's jump to some costs and show you what is the range of costs for things we're looking at. We've simplified this to just make it sort of a summary.
Hey, Dale, or someone, can you zoom in on this document? We're having a hard time seeing it.
Sure.
Thank you.
It better?
Yes, that's better. Thank you.
Okay. All right, no problem. Thanks for letting us know. So roadway A basic, we looked at a couple slides of that, and that again was just the simple concrete and grass, and the estimate for those components of the construction is about $423,000. And because it's the basic option, those would be borne by the state. So the state would pay for it. The city has no participation. If we go to roadway B, that's where we're looking at still the standard concrete, maybe some colored in the trees. The estimate jumps to about $560,000. And that same $423,500 paid by the state. So about $136,000 then would be a city cost. As we move to roadway C, that medium high, and you can see again, there's some of the components that we include, potentially colored concrete, granite riprap, something decorative in the medians, the trees, benches and receptacles. Our estimate's about 560,000, and that includes wayfinding signs too, by the way. The estimate jumps to about 560,000, or no, I'm sorry, 682,000, which means that the city would be responsible for about 260,000 of that, because again, now we're just jumping above the basic concept. And then finally, if you decide to go whole hog and you want everything, colored concrete, riprap, trees, all the furniture, wayfinding signs, banner poles, all of that, the city cost would jump to about 295,000. So with those 4 roadway options, you can see your costs range from 0 to just about $300,000. And if you have the slides printed out that we just went through, you can look back at slides 14 and 15 to kind of see what these include. We'll go to, yeah.
Mayor or whoever, may I ask a question, please? It's Michelle.
Go ahead, Michelle.
So I after looking at all of this, am leaning strongly to doing the very most that we can on Mankato, simply because it is, without exception, our busiest roadway and what I would consider one of the gateways to our entire community. But you had mentioned that we don't ever have to take the colored concrete option in any of the plans. Do you know what the cost difference might be if we choose standard concrete over colored? So let's say we put roadway D, is that you would have to kind of contemplate what that would be, or do you have an idea of what the difference in cost is for colored? How would it change the price, or
right.
would it?
I could take a look. I mean, I'm looking at a little more detailed sheet right now, Michelle. And
Okay.
It's approximately 181,000 would be,
Yeah.
you could subtract out of that.
I love that. Thank you.
Yep.
any other questions on the costs on this page?
I have a question, Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead.
I have mixed feelings about a lot of the aesthetics, but I feel pretty strongly that I would like if we could have as much lighting as possible for the safety of our drivers and pedestrians. So I guess I'm just curious if there's if this is an a la carte menu, or if we have to take them as they stand.
No, you don't have to accept a package as we're showing it tonight. I mean, it's up to you as to what you want to include. So the lighting, I mean, there's really basically two options with the lighting. The Cobra heads alone, or the Cobra heads with the trail lights. And I guess I should make sure I'm understanding your question correctly. Are you thinking that you may not want all of those 33 trail lights? Because the Cobra heads will all go in. They're needed for safety.
No, I'm interested in the curved neck ones that go over the pedestrian areas, in addition to the Cobra heads. But based on what it would cost the city, if we could not agree on any other additional items to my fellow council members, then that would be the one I would really advocate for, just for the safety of the folks who walk and bike and do not have vehicles.
Right. Yeah, and it's just to be sure. I mean, we would recommend that if you add the trail sidewalk lighting, that you include all of them. Make sure you have a consistency throughout the corridor so people know what to expect. And there, Kevin has shown the Cobra head lighting and the split, because there are a couple of those on city streets. And then the lighting option B includes those 15-foot trail and sidewalk lighting options, the 33 of them. And so that costs the city about 240,000 to go just from the basic to the basic with the aesthetic trail lighting.
Mr. Mayor. Go ahead, Steve, and then I'll get you, Michelle.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. So Dale, thank you for your description. Kind of to one of my co-counsel people's points here, will you be able to give us kind of a breakdown of the a la carte menu, so we can pick and choose? Hey, we're Americans. We want to pick and choose from the menu. So that's question one. Question two would be, so I see relocation of the Welcome to Winona sign. Do we have a proposed site, or is that to be determined?
That is, MnDOT's not going to pick the site on that because the sign is there right now by permit. So that's really a city's decision as to where do we want it to fit within the context of this new corridor and everything else. And if that ends up being, on MnDOT right away, you'd have to go through the permitting process again. Or you may choose to put it someplace else.
Sure. Do we have a space that we can permit from you again?
I'll have to let Chad answer that.
Yeah, I think that we could work to find a location for that. I just, the reason is it'll be impacted by construction. Like you said, it's there by permit. So, yeah, we'll need to be relocated, but I'm sure we could find a workable location there that would work for it. So.
Sounds good. I think based on what other colleagues are saying here, we'd really like a price list if we could, and we can then attempt to come to an agreement. Thank you.
Right. And I think what we could do, we have a more expansive spreadsheet that includes all the numbers here, but we decided to sort of keep it simple to roll up those numbers and just show the options. We can provide you with more detail so you can see what those individual items are costing.
Michelle, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. How is this lighting going to be in relation to what's on Mankato right now? If we went with the lighting option A, is that similar to the experience we have on Mankato now? Is it more? Is it less?
I believe it's more than what you have there now.
So I guess this would be the one area where I would be okay with just going with lighting option A. Just having shopped down there frequently in the evening, I never find the walkways to be dimly lit. I would err on the side of more trees versus the other lights, but just to throw that out there, I don't, with all of those businesses lit up, I feel very comfortable. But that's just from, that's very expensive, the $309,000 for trail lights. And that's just my 2 cents. If we're getting more light than we currently have, which I find it to be very sufficient with what we have down there now, then I feel like we would be okay with just the Cobra. Just my 2 cents.
I think that's a great point, and we certainly have time for council to go down there in the evening and just judge for yourself whether you think it's adequately lit or not. Again, understanding that more lighting will be than there is right now.
Mayor George here with the question.
Go ahead, George.
Thank you. Yeah, for Steve, or I guess, yeah, for Manager Sarvey, we're talking all these numbers here. Do we have a budget number yet that the city is going to be spending on this project?
Oh, the answer is yes. It's going to be a state aid number. So again, the least amount that we spend, the more state aid project we can do elsewhere in the city.
Okay, but we would have funds to whatever, let's say for some odd reason or for every reason, let's say we take the best plan, would there be money there to cover that?
Yes.
Okay. And also, we're talking about these roundabouts and, we're going to make them very beautiful. And all you hear from people is all the accidents that happen in roundabouts. Hell, everybody going through there, they'll be looking at the shrubbery and the trees and the beautiful landscape, and they will be bailing into one another. Just a comment.
I think Dale meant the passengers could have a pleasant experience. The drivers, of course, need to be focused on staying in their lane.
Yes.
One other point that I'd like to make on behalf of staff, though, is banners are nice, but there's some manpower intensity, human power intensity to changing those out, making sure they don't get frayed. Same with plantings and other materials in the median. We still have to maintain that. MnDOT won't be taking care of that. So we certainly don't want to add too much to the list. We certainly want it to be pleasing, and we'll do whatever the council puts forward as the plan. But trying to figure out who's going to buy banners, swapping them out, that can be problematic. And then just trash that accumulates, and then also the weeds that come up those have always been an issue for us to try to take care of. So the easier it is for us to take care of it, the better looking it is. Those things I think can be balanced out. And I would certainly advocate for the benches. There are a couple of really large senior homes in that area. There's a lot of people out. Dale, I think we should have a viewing area that's safe for them so they can sit out there and watch the project. You'll have a lot of project managers watching that thing go on, but every day there's a lot of people that walk up and down that sidewalk, and having a place for them to sit, I think would be nice, and maybe shaded to some extent, like on a daily today.
Yeah.
Mayor George, I just have one more question. This would be for Chad.
Go ahead, Judge.
As we're hearing now about the one which bringing the most discussion is the one out on 1460, 143 out there. People are envisioning when they pull up to that intersection right now that is the roundabout. Could you explain just how large, the best you can, how large that intersection is going to increase?
Yeah, I guess it's a little bit hard to answer that directly. I guess the thing that's different at the intersection compared to how it is today, today there's not only 2 approach lanes basically from each direction, but you also have all the left turn lanes, the right turn lanes. A couple of the movements, they have the free right, like say for example, southbound 43 to go north on 61, and then kind of the vice versa down by Quick Trip. So generally at a roundabout, the approaches to the intersection actually have less pavement. So it's less pavement on the approaches, but then at the roundabout itself, it'll be a little bit larger. So kind of in the corners of the intersection, right out in the quadrants, that would be larger, but on the approaches, it'll be less, if that makes sense.
Okay, but it will be a lot larger than what it is right now.
Correct. Definitely. Yeah, it definitely will be a larger diameter than that.
Thank you.
So Mayor, I have a question and a comment. I know that the city has spent some money and some resources coming up with a design for benches downtown, something that we can hope to be consistent throughout the downtown area. I would be interested in seeing that be taken into consideration on Mankato as well.
Thanks, Pam. Any other questions at all? No?
I was just gonna say, this is Chad again, I'm sorry, but
Go ahead, Jed.
I was just gonna clarify too on the maintenance. It was kind of said already, but generally the way it gets looked at is, the things that are added more to city cost would be maintained by the city. So, obviously all the additional landscaping or anything like that, banner poles, all that. But the other thing is the lighting. So generally, if there's any aesthetic lighting, that is all owned, and it's owned, paid for, and maintained by the local community. So generally, we pay for the lights to light the highway. A lot of that we would go along, like if there's maintenance on that, some of that is a shared responsibility. But when you look at the trail lighting or any aesthetic lighting, that would be, kind of in that same category with paid for, owned by, and maintained by the city. So just know that you'd be not only taking on the upfront cost, but kind of the long term as well.
Mayor Aaron here, I have a quick question.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Chad, maybe you can answer this. Is there any location, say within 100 miles of us, that has some sort of an example of what we're looking at doing that we would, be able to actually drive there and take a look at?
I would say a good example would probably be up the road in Lake City, that project that was completed here last year.
Do they
there
have
was a lot of aesthetics that was put into that project, and they they spent, excess of $1 million on that. But, there's decorative lighting on that. There's trees in the boulevard. There's colored concrete. I know they had some different pavers that were incorporated into that. So I think you could, get a good idea just by driving up there if you're
Okay.
interested.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chad. Any other questions for Chad or Dale? All right, we'll end this presentation for now. Thanks, everyone, and we'll get back together in about 20 minutes here for the council meeting.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thank you.